All right, so we could probably start. I'm going to share my screen because I'll go through a few things. And for those of you who are new, we invite you to turn on your camera and unmute yourself and just talk away. I have a hard time seeing the chat whenever I share the screen. Kelly and Faith usually monitor it, as does Bob. So I try to keep up with what the conversations are, but the goal here is just to have a conversation. And if you have questions, ask. I can't see hands waving and stuff like that. So just unmute and let's have a conversation and we'll get after it.
Are you going to be ready? Are you ready?
Michelle? Well, now if you have background noise. Yeah, Bob, you're muted, buddy. I think you're talking, but maybe you're talking on the phone.
Yeah, but it was nothing useful, so it's okay.
So it was worth the mute, huh? All right, cool. So today what we're going to do is we're actually going to, Bob and I are going to tag team and go over a few things because Bob's got a unique perspective on this, as do I as well. So hang on a minute now. Dang it. Let's see if we can get into the share screen mode and share the correct screen, and then we'll hit the old slide deck. All right. Assuming everybody can see that okay, right? Okay. So what we thought about was like, I don't know what it's like in your organization, but in our organization, we have 6 values, and that's learn, teach, serve, grow, innovate, and execute. All right, sounds like a mouthful, but the key thing is we want people to learn. We want them to be curious because that's how we're able to teach others, serve others better, and help innovate as an organization, right? And so when I originally thought of this topic, Bob and I were having lunch and we were thinking about it. We're like, this would really probably resonate with some people. And so I know it starts off as 5 ways that you can use AI to teach your team how to innovate with everything. But I kind of come up with 12. I couldn't stop at 5. I was like, okay, I know that there's several that we can do and that we do internally, but there's so many more. And I'm going to run through a few of the ones that I've got. Bob's then going to kind of take over and go through what he's got and some processes. And hopefully this will be meaningful to everybody, because I would love it if all of our employees and your employees could be thinking about how do they make their job better or their execution better or the way they serve people better. And a lot of times you can just go straight to an AI tool and leverage that and make things better. All right. So the first one is obviously what we would call AI-driven brainstorming sessions, which is why I went from 5 to 12. So I know that when we're doing it internally, a lot of times I don't have anybody to ask. A lot of times it's 8 o'clock at night or it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I need to really think through something. And by the way, every single one of these, there are specific AI tools for, but every single one of these things, you can actually use ChatGPT to help you execute. So AI-driven brainstorming sessions is just simply going to AI first, describing your problem, describing the situation, and then having it give you ideas. And I'm sure a lot of you are already doing that. And there are specific prompts that we've built that actually facilitate that. A lot of them are what we would call conversational prompts, right? And there are conversational AI tools out there that will help you accomplish that. Then one of the more interesting things is to actually build a scenario and have ChatGPT or the other AI tools out there simulate what would happen under that scenario. So you have to get relatively descriptive as you're going through it, but it's easy to do when you're talking conversationally with an AI to really kind of explore those scenarios. I've done that in a number of circumstances, and it really helps me kind of crystallize my thoughts. A lot of times, of course, it'll come back with something useless, but a lot of times it comes back with something pretty doggone meaningful too. So, all right. Mood tracking is kind of a, whoops, hang on a minute, I skipped one. Let me go over here to the data visualization. So, and Bob, you may even be using some of this on your own, but a lot of times you have a lot of data that you need to massage, but using data visualization tools to analyze it and present the data back in a different manner helps you see things differently, you know? And when I talk about going to AI first, that's where it really takes a culture where you want people to be constantly thinking, is there a better way? Is there something I'm not seeing that I need to be seeing? And for me, you know, a lot of times I know that my creative peak is usually in the mornings. And then I get into a zone of just zeroing in and being productive. You know, that's just me. Everybody else is different. So there are actually apps on your phone, apps on your watch. There are lots of tools for tracking your moods, or, you know, lots of other biorhythm type things. And you can pay attention to that. And when you do, you'll find that you're at peak levels at certain points of the day. And then the question is that a creative peak, or is it more of a productive peak? You know, when do you drop off? What are you doing in the middle of all that? Are you, is it because you have an insulin spike or something like that because you ate? What is it that's making that happen? All right. So it's a good thing to start tracking that. And then it's amazing what AI will do with those kinds of things. Analyzing text is another good one. You know, we've obviously in these series that we've been going through, we've done that quite a bit, where we'll take some content and we'll analyze it and we'll try to make it better, or we'll take some content and we'll look for new opportunities in that content. So we use that all the time. And this one we're probably using Claude, I don't know, 40% of the time, ChatGPT, you know, 60% of the time. And then, I don't know. We've tested other tools, and those are the tools that we like the best. So this one is another one, scenario simulation and planning. And I've used this with a lot of clients where I will literally kind of spell out a scenario, and then I'll ask the AI to poke holes in it, or to make it better, or to tell me how I can streamline it or make it more efficient. And the more information you give it, obviously the better that tool is going to respond and help you out, you know? So pretty slick little deal. Social media scanning is another interesting way to use AI. There are plugins inside of ChatGPT that'll scan YouTube videos, that'll scan all kind of other things. And so if you're stuck in a rut, just have ChatGPT or some other AI tool start to scan and pull back some ideas and give it the tight parameters that you need, you know, especially if you're on the creative side and you're trying to write something interesting. It'll come back with some pretty good ideas. And it really helps to get your creative juices flowing. This is kind of a unique one. I've only done this once or twice, where I try to take my target persona and I build that out. You know, we always build that out for marketing purposes, so we know exactly who we're talking to and what's going on with them, economically, emotionally, etc. But I've tried a couple times to just say, tell me what this person does on a day-to-day basis, you know, giving it a lot more detail than that and having it come back with stuff. And then I'll ask it questions about what it came back with to just dig deeper and dig deeper and dig deeper. One of the things is, you know, you probably heard of the 5 whys before, where you just ask why, or what's important about that 5 times in a row, and it'll give you a more and more detailed answer. And this is a really, really good way to really understand what's going on with your customer and how can you serve them better, or how can you market to them better, whatever the case may be. It's a really interesting use case that, like I said, I've only recently started to employ that, but what it comes back with is really, really interesting. And speaking of this kind of role playing, role reversal inside of your organization is another one where you could ask your employees to say, I want to look at, this person's job over here so I can understand maybe what's going on more. You could literally take job descriptions that you have on the HR side, pop them into ChatGPT, and have ChatGPT or any other AI tool come back with you and tell you what's going on with that person and what they go through on a day-to-day basis. And as an HR, if you have an HR department, you might even have your HR department create this role-playing procedure so that someone can understand what someone else is going through, and they can start to really grip, okay, now I know why they're reacting this way, or now I know how to respond to them better, right? So that's a really, really interesting use case. Routine task analysis is another one that is kind of handy that not many people think about, where you just simply take, let's just say that you've documented some SOPs, plug the SOPs into an AI tool and ask the AI to optimize those SOPs. Are we missing anything? Do we need to add anything? Do we need to subtract anything? Do we need to delegate something differently? Those kinds of things are exceptionally helpful, especially as you're trying to get your employees to become more efficient. But if they're thinking that way, that's a good thing, right? If they start to say, something is wrong here, well, as long as they have those documented SOPs, then they can pop it in there. Now, on the other end, you could also use ChatGPT to help you develop those SOPs as well and help you optimize those. And then, finally, man, I got all these screens in the way, is what I call the transaction analysis. And this is one that you definitely need to be careful with what you're doing. You don't necessarily want to upload this into just any AI tool. You want to make sure it's secure. So I have taken transaction data for like a 6-month period. So literally thousands of transactions and customers and what they bought and the pricing, et cetera. And I've used it to give me insights as to new markets that we could explore, customer relationships that we need to enhance, customer relationships that are maybe on the decline, products that we could mix and match. I've even got it to where it will teach me how to bundle certain products so that I can get a bigger transaction out of a client and offer them more value. So all of those are different ways that we've used AI to really kind of shape the thinking and how we serve our clients better. So with that, are there any questions? And I'm going to let Bob kind of do his magic. Anybody have any thoughts on all that? Crickets. All right.
Well, that's pretty good fire hose. That's a lot in a short
Rapid fire is what that was. Yeah, exactly.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Security of using your, let me call it your customer transaction data. That would be troubling for me to put that kind of data on any platform other than my own. We're also HIPAA compliant and so on. So that would be, we have secure clients, banking, etc. That would be troubling to me. How do you get around that?
So you have to make sure you're with the right AI tool. There are AI tools that are HIPAA compliant. There's some I found that specifically deal with banks. And I wonder if I have them up on the screen.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, can you name some?
Yeah, give me a second.
While he's doing that, I dropped a link in the chat that kind of, it's one of the articles that's talking about data privacy and this AI large language models. And by the way, this is evolving day by day. So everything that everybody's thinking right now, whatever we think the state of the art is, as far as data privacy goes right this second, is not going to be the same in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think that's why these sessions are really important, is that we can kind of keep current, because this is moving way too fast for anybody to be able to keep up with by themselves. So I would suggest, if you do find something as it relates to data privacy in your particular sector or whatever, be sure and make a note of that and share it with the group when you come back on, because what really makes this work is all the pairs of eyes that we have looking at it from our view of the apple. You know what I mean? So it's a worthy effort, so that we can all kind of we can crowdsource staying current on what's going on, or at least what people are talking about.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see if this one that I'm looking at, I'll have to triple check, but there was one that I looked at called Amelia.ai, and it's conversational AI, and they tout that that global enterprises trust their conversational AI platform. That would tell me there's some security to it. There is another one that I was looking at called Anylogic. It looks like, I don't know whether it's Analogic or Anylogic, ANYLOGIC.com. They appear to have some secure AI agents. I think that was the one that I was looking at. What they cost, I don't know. Are they for a small business? I'm not really sure. Some of these things can be pretty pricey. I looked at one earlier this week that was like $2,500 a month to start. So that's not for the faint of heart, at least not on my budget. So, but there are tools out there. I know there are several, John, that you could actually install locally. Bob could probably help you with that, but that becomes, like, for instance, I think we talked about it last week. Facebook will allow you to download theirs, and that's the last thing I need Facebook to have access to my entire machine with artificial intelligence that they don't even know what the hell it's doing. So I'm not comfortable with that, right? So IP on the creative side. What do you mean, Dax? Tell me what you're talking about.
You're muted, Dax.
Yeah, he's looking for the unmute button.
I got you.
So if you create something previously, let's say if it's whatever type of genre of entertainment or media, and you go in and you have AI edit it, or you have it fill in some blanks, or you help any type of assistance you get from it, who owns the intellectual properties at that time?
So the great question, that really depends on the AI tool, but most of them are telling you that you don't own it. If it's AI generated, you either don't own it or you jointly own the IP. You have to read their terms of use. I read somebody's terms of use last week that blew my mind. And I think, Paul, you may have sent it to me, but when I read it, I was like, holy crap. I don't think I could use this one, because they basically said anything that you put in here, we own, you don't. So you have to be really, really careful with that.
And that's one thing I was looking at between, creatively combining with AI versus just letting it produce it itself.
Yeah. So, we looked at a couple tools last week or the week before, right, on the video creation side. If they're creating it, essentially they own it, because they're also using, in one case, they're using licensed images and licensed stock photography. So you're sub-licensing that. But if the AI produces it, again, you just have to read everybody's own disclosure. But for the most part, the ones that I've seen, if you're using AI, a lot of them now are just saying, hey, you can't use this for commercial purposes, or you can't claim ownership. So it'll probably evolve more, for more money, you can own the rights, but if it's a free tool, forget about it.
Right.
I dropped
Eric, you
I
were
dropped a
saying-
link. I dropped
yeah.
a link, by the way, to another AI engine that you can actually, it's kind of a two-stage model where you can have a tuning module for the language, for the AI engine on the backside. So there's lots of different, there's a lot of technical aspects of this that we could probably burn infinite amount of time talking about, but there are ways to do what you're talking about. But I will tell you, those of you who want to have your own, and I think you're about to answer this question, John, for Eric, if you want to have your own actual engine, I mean, those are non-trivial, right? I mean, the hardware it takes to actually build those language models, and then the amount of training you have to do on them to get them to be roughly the equivalent of what's available for free right now. You're talking a couple $100,000 just for kind of the types of hardware you would need to be able to do some of those things. So,
Well, some of them you could literally run on a Mac, right? But the question is, where's the processing taking place? Is it calling back to the mothership to do the processing?
Yes.
That's the part I've just frankly I've never had the cojones to install one. I don't know, Glenn, you were kind of nodding your head. Have you ever installed one locally?
Yeah, I had some success with the one that was from the UAE Falcon 40B.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
ran
ran
okay.
it locally? Really?
Ran okay locally. Yeah. I haven't tried Meta's big one yet.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, it will run locally, but again, I just don't know how it operates. I haven't dug into it, so I don't know whether it's processing everything locally, and Bob, who knows? But I would assume that if you're feeding it, modest bits of information, like I've seen some chat bots where you can install locally and you just feed it whatever it is, and it just limits itself in that world, But I know that some of the image generation tools you can install locally, which is kind of interesting. If you've got a nice NVIDIA processor, you might be able to pull off some interesting graphics, but I have not dug in to really understand how much of your own processor it's going to eat up. And Bob, I don't know, you may have dug in deeper over there at GDS, but the CPU power and the processors that NVIDIA is now coming out with are just insane. But these engines like a ChatGPT, they're trying to serve millions of inquiries at a time. Locally, you're basically managing a single inquiry, but the question is, how big is the data set, right? And where does all that data reside? If it's the world's data, then it's got to call back to the mothership. It isn't going to put that on your, 2 terabyte hard drive, right? At least that's my theory.
No, it's not. That's right. That's the reason that would be the reason you would know that it's doing things elsewhere, right? Because just the amount of data that it takes to be able, once you start building that tree and training it up, it's taking that data, breaking it down and building out those neural nets, right? So it has to actually take up space to do that. And the processing power is non-trivial.
Right. But to John's original question, if you're just simply trying to analyze a series of transactions from your ERP or from your accounting system, you could do that locally and not really tax a whole lot of hardware. But it's just if you're trying to, use the world's knowledge and analyze stuff, that's a different animal. But again, I wish I was more versed on this. Maybe what I'll do on a future episode, if we want to call them that, is bring in somebody who does this. If you guys have any connections or thoughts on that, I will search such a beast out and we'll get him or her on the call.
Yeah, the guy that's my software architect, he and I do this on the side. So we've got a couple of language models that we just put on some old servers. We bought some $700 Dell servers that were, a few years old, and started building the language model on it, which is, they're entertaining. I mean, we got to know a lot about the dynamics about how it works and what kind of resources it winds up consuming. But, on one of those old $700 servers, we were able to build up a model that it could at least make semi good stories, you know what I mean? But orders of magnitude less than what we see in ChatGPT or these other AI agents. It's more of a toy compared to the tool that these others represent. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that OpenAI project, I mean, they spent $4 million in just CPU usage and electricity to train that thing up, right? I mean, so I mean, it should make everybody understand what the scale of that kind of work requires to be able to produce something on the same level as a chat GPT, right?
You know, in the meanwhile, I mean, since I can't control that aspect of it, you know, all I want to try to do is just say, hey, how do I leverage what we have to become more proficient and to serve clients better? And that's kind of the whole idea here. Renee, if a custom chatbot's created that utilizes a company's knowledge base to answer customer questions, is there a security concern with the platform of the API? Does the information collected on the company website, ChatGPT, get fed into the mothership? Okay, so I've heard conflicting reports on that. I have heard that it is not used to educate the AI, and I have actually tried, and it did not. Like, for instance, as you guys know, that ChatGPT was educated from 2021 backwards and nothing forwards. You have to go and use a plugin to retrieve more current information. Well, in 2021, we were a web design and a digital media SEO kind of company, right? But we sold all that off in 2022, and then we're basically what you're seeing here, you know. So I would go in and say, who's Bazooka? And I'm like, oh, you build websites. I'm like, no, here's what we do. You know, I would do that in a session. And then I'd come back in a different session. Who's Bazooka? You're a web design company. I'm like, no, I just told you, you know. And so I would try over and over and again to feed it information. I used 3 different accounts. I kept feeding it information about our new business model, the products that we sell, the acronym optics, which is ours. I would ask it, what is optics? And it would come back with something that's not us. So I've tried forever to literally shove data into it to get it to remember it, and it won't. So, and then I even ask it, I'm like, how do I get something in here? And it says it's got to go through a vetting process. And it tells you essentially, we have people who control what goes into here, which is good. You know, you'd want that on one end. On the other end, is it good? Because then you have somebody dictating the knowledge that goes in there, you know, and that's the ethical dilemma is what do you police? It's kind of the, you know, we've been in that dilemma since COVID, right? What is misinformation? Because it seems to have gotten redefined, you know. Incorrect information, false information is one thing. Intentionally misleading is another thing. But to have a discussion around possibilities is to me good, you know. And I would hate to have science totally shut down any kind of discourse or debate over possibilities because there's another power that says we don't want to have that discussion, you know. Anyway, I don't know whether that answers your question, Renee, but is there a security concern with the API? There's, you know, to me, there are always security concerns. And Bob, you're in the security field, so you have to have controls on both ends of that, you know.
Yep. Yeah, you do, and you got to know what the rules are, whatever the engine you're working with is. You know, they have to spell out their terms and conditions, and you know, most of them. You know, that link that I had to, you know, data security for your, you know, that I posted earlier in the chat. It breaks it down for multiple different services, kind of what's involved in that. But in almost all the cases, they have the ability for you to opt out of anything that you put into them being actually recorded or stored, and so that you just have to, you know, like everything else, you know, buyer beware. You need to read and do your research on, you know, the engines that you're going to use. That's really all there is to it. And by the way, as I said, these things are evolving. So, you know, as privacy concerns or get more paramount for everybody. This is, it's going to become, the rules are going to get set and they're going to get leveled by the people who are using the tools, right? That's how that's going to work. So
Yeah.
that's going to evolve quite a bit. And Renee, I see what you were talking about a chatbot, but if you've got, if you're using a chatbot website, let's say if that's all software as a service that you're using, that's one thing. If you are hosting the elements of your chatbot internally and they are reaching out to large language models to help with the dialogue as it relates to the customers, then you just have to know that, and you have to know what the conditions are as it relates to the whoever the chatbot vendor is. In our case, we're building our own chatbot, so we're controlling everything, at a granular level. But it's what you see is what you get when you buy those things.
Yeah, true. And the thing that I've found, and I wish Jalen was on, because she's way deeper into it, having created her own chat bot specifically for ophthalmology clinics. I've found that most of these theoretically AI driven chatbots are really nothing but decision trees.
Right.
And so it's really more automation than it is literal AI, because it's so bracketed in. Like, I played around with Live Person, and it's still, you have to build in decision trees, and it will just alter its response based on a decision tree. But if you don't have any kind of branch, then it's not going to give you a decent answer. The AI is trying to interpret the intent of your question and then respond based on a decision tree. But this Amelia thing that I was telling you about earlier, Amelia AI, that one is literal conversation. So you would have to feed it a lot of information, but the way it responds is way more powerful than any other tool I've seen. Now, it could cost an arm and a leg. I haven't had a conversation with them yet to figure out what it costs, but I was impressed with what I have dug into so far on it. I thought it was pretty intriguing. So I'll probably be digging into that pretty soon to see what else I can come up with. So
we're in the process of deploying, chatbots. But the thing that's changed in the last 8 months is that knowledge bases and chatbots have been there for years, right? But as John was talking about, they were very formulaic. They would be because those things are only useful if they have the context of your particular business or your relationship with the customer as part of the knowledge base that it's drawing on, right? So you can't just use a generic chatbot to do customer service for your company without any, without you putting any input into it about what the context of your relationship is with your customer, what's the product and service, what's all the support, steps that your organization does. Those are the things that make chatbots useful for your company, right? So those are all in context with your organization. But what's changed in the last 8 months, instead of them being very dry replies, ones that you get the same reply. If you ask the same question twice, you get the same reply twice. What they're starting to do is they're starting to integrate into these large language models and letting the models at least write the dialogue, so that if you ask the same question twice, you might get a different response with the same answer. You get the same solution, but it'll be phrased differently. So it's more natural, right? So it's not like a machine is pumping out a reply to you. It has a higher empathy rating with people who use it, because it speaks more on a level of a natural language. So that is what's changed with chatbots in the last 6 or 8 months, is they're starting to integrate on the backside with the large language models, not passing your data to them, but saying, hey, I'm going to write this response. Rewrite it for me real quick for a 5th grade level or whatever. And then they use that as the reply back, right? Without changing. And John's kind of showed you that with the prompt engineering. You can keep elements of that response exactly like you want it, and let ChatGPT or some other large language model fill in the other language around it.
Yeah.
Make it more dynamic, so it's not so predictable.
Yeah. And Mike, to your point, I've noticed this a lot myself. There's a million AI startups out there. And from what I can see, most of them are tapping into ChatGPT's AI through their API. Some of them are bragging that they're tapping into multiple LLMs, but I think most of them are tapping into this. I like, for instance, I was looking at one. Ironically enough, today it's called ideagenerator.ai, and to me, it's like most of the rest of them. It's a wrapper around ChatGPT that they try to narrow its focus. You can do the exact same thing just inside of ChatGPT, but they're trying to capture a little play on it. There's another one that's called Pace AI, which is kind of intriguing. I'm trying to figure out now who they're tapping into, and it's paceai.co. All the other links you'll find are broken, but that looks kind of interesting. It's for product managers and business analysts. So I don't know how many of these tools actually have built their own true AI engine, which is why, if you read my post a couple of weeks ago when Paul sent that email to me that said ChatGPT or OpenAI is going to go bankrupt by the end of 2024, I was like, oh man, that's somebody with a clickbait article. I started looking at all the articles that were posting that, and they're all non-US based news outlets. And then I was like, man, they don't really understand what kind of business model is underneath it. And sure, it costs what was some ridiculous number to operate every month. Bob, you may remember what it was, but it was insane. But
doesn't matter with the $4 billion valuation or whatever it is right now.
Well, they got it's not just the valuation. It is the business model they have created. All they have to do is flick a switch. Right. And they're going to be profitable. And sure enough, what was it yesterday, Paul? You sent me another one that all of a sudden now they're way ahead of their forecasts to hit $1 billion in revenue this year, right? So they thought this year would be the year they make $1 billion. Now they're like already ahead of it, and they're minting money. Well, of course they are, because the only thing we see is the front end $20 a month. But on the back end, you got people paying for that API out the wazoo. And I'm telling you, you guys mark my words, they will monetize that plugin thing just like Apple did with the iPhone and the App Store. So they're going to monetize that, and that's going to just be insane when they do that. They just got to, if they could hire some Apple consultants to actually make the UI useful instead of Microsoft consultants, it might be cool, right? But the plugin store is a chocolate mess right now, but at least it's something. But I do feel like every time I bump into one of these AI tools, it's just a narrow wrapper around OpenAI, Mike, to be honest with you. I've looked at a lot of these copywriting tools, and that's all it is, which is why I'm such a big fan of OpenAI and ChatGPT, is because it doesn't have the walls that these other AI tools put around it. Because the other AI tools are trying to solve for a specific problem, But if you know how to prompt around that problem inside of a wider thing, you get a better response. Just my personal opinion. I don't know whether that answers your question, Mike, or not, but cool. Cool. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Any other questions? Bob, did you want to, you had some other stuff you were going to share.
Yeah, I can do that. If we're ready for it. Okay. So John, John and I, like, as he alluded to earlier, he and I had lunch, which is always dangerous, for people like John and I to sit around and start thinking about things we can do, because there's never a shortage of things that we can do. But I'm currently teaching a class at the University on Innovation Engineering, and I've been doing it I've been in that system for about 12 years, but I also have trained our organization on it. And when John was talking about how AI can kind of help you from, an innovation or a culture of innovation standpoint in your organization, I have a lot of material. I could talk a month on that, but I had some slides that I thought might be of interest to everyone. And certainly on a go-forward basis, if we want to dig deeper into anything, we can. But I'm just going to give you a few slides here. But I put this slide in because I actually had this slide put together. I don't know. I did it 2018 or so. I was teaching a master's class over at LSU on operations. And this was the big concern at that point in time back then, was like how social media was going to impact your organization. I don't even know if you guys remember that, but that was like, you know, there were articles flying around, and everything that you see as it relates to AI was flying around about how social media was going to be a problem for companies. And how are you going to use it to integrate into your company so that you know, that your employees could kind of be more engaged in that. So it's always interesting. New technologies always find their way to the workplace one way or another. And this was just an example of that. Well, in the context of what we talk about in here now, we all know that we've moved. When's the last time you had a discussion about social media being used in your company, right? I mean, it used to be on a regular basis, and now it's just part of the background noise of running your company. Well, the same thing's going to happen as we keep moving forward with AI, right? We're going to have to find ways to employ it and use it. Like we, you know, in our case, early on, we adopted the Facebook for Business. So our internal connectivity and communication with our employees was look just like they did at home with their Facebook with their friends and things, which made it kind of a seamless transition for our company to use. But so we just adopted it, right? And we integrated it, and we set up the rules around it. We just kept going. It's going to be the same thing for you know, all these AI engines as we move forward. So the kind of impacts you could see today. So this is from a document that John shared with me, but this is exactly what, in the short term, what is AI going to be able to do for you and your organization? And these are I think are the big elements that it really touches on, right? We've talked about ways to, you know, accelerate and optimize your communications. That's a fairly clear one. Summarization, and then research assistant, you know, being able to go out and pull sources for something. These are all things that we are currently, all of our employees are being trained to be able to go out and ask. Basically, we're starting to train them on how to do prompt engineering so that they can get results to kind of help them, whatever the context of the task is that they're doing. We're showing them how to use these kinds of basic tools to, you know, to help them generate the content we need so that we can communicate amongst ourselves and then between ourselves and our customers. But it also helps them do research on inside innovations like our system improvements and things. They're really getting the most benefit out of that from sources like ChatGPT and other things, because they can go out and ask, hey, give me 10 ways that other companies are dealing with this particular issue, this system problem or this procedure problem or whatever it happens to be, and get back something that they can use to be kind of a launch pad for them to go and formulate, you know, a recommendation for how we should do it. And then obviously, yes, and better your question, just speak up. Intelligent recaps, tone and awareness. We've studied that in here, right? Writing support and writing suggestions. Our salespeople are getting a big use out of it. In fact, we're gonna get John to come out to our organization and kind of take a look at how we're doing things and show them. I would say that our organization's playing in the minor leagues right now on this front. You know, we're not embracing everything that's possible, and we're going to get John out to show them how to play in the major leagues on this front. So these are just short-term things that can kind of happen. And as it relates to system improvements and running your organizations, I always love this statement. This is Dr. Deming. I don't know if you don't know who Dr. Deming is. It's not that. Yeah, you can Google him and find a lot out about it. But you know, this has always been true, and it has proven out that any failures in a company or an organization from a performance or delivery standpoint are due to the system that is used to actually produce them and monitor and manage them, right? And then 6% are due to the workers. So we actually have, as part of our organization, we have a meeting once a week with all of our, what I call the sergeants of the Army. Those are the people who really get things done, the managers, directors who really know how things work. And they're the ones that help drive innovation in our organization. I am there as the COO to facilitate that meeting, but in the end, they're the ones that are author the system improvements, suggestions for that. And again, now we're starting to use our AI tools to get better and better ideas, which really is kind of at the heart of an innovation system. This is what we call a process map in our organization. You know, there's some really cool tools now that allow you to do diagramming just by using verbal, and I'll show you a couple examples of that. But we use process tools like this to kind of lay these things out. Well, there was a big group had to get together to kind of produce something like this. But now individuals are able to at least get first drafts cut, and then the time to look at these and prove them and manipulate them is a lot shorter, tremendously shorter, half the time, right? Mind mapping tools. We do a lot of mind mapping in our organization. You can, again, some of these, one of the AI plugins that I found was really good at, doing mind maps, let you produce mind maps. If you guys have any questions, just shout them out anytime.
I've never used one to actually produce the mind map. So that's kind of interesting. I've had to mind map it myself.
When I get a second here, I'll show you. Let me show you this one plugin. Oh.
I used one Chat GPT tool that it would actually create diagrams, but it was kind of rudimentary. Yeah.
This is it, but it depends on what you ask it. But I just wanted to show that you can actually use a plugin. This is Show Me, which is one of the plugins for Chat GPT. And you can basically say, like, I just put in some simple things, like show me how voting works, and you can get an image, and you can get that image as a starter image. And then as John's kind of showed you in the past, you can take something like that and you can say, okay, well, this is the basis that I need for it. These are the steps. Now let another image generating program go to town on it, right? And produce a much more detailed kind of an image. And if you don't really understand how some things work, you can say, look, okay, it's easy enough. Ask it. I asked it how an occupational license in Louisiana is done, and it gave me this kind of really basic summary thing. It wasn't as much detail. And then I asked it again. Well, okay, show me writing a program works. And it gave you a simplified definition of kind of how the process works. If you have no idea about these things, and if you have some way of asking, even a rudimentary projection like this gives you something to work with. So it's not useless at all to be able to use those tools, and they're going to improve.
Yeah. And you can actually pump in an outline, you can pump in an outline and it'll diagram that out. But if you ask the right questions in it, much deeper than a 1-sentence question, it'll branch out and do that stuff. It won't just be totally vertical, but it does take a little bit of finessing. You know what? Glenn, you use Whimsical?
Oh yeah. I did a little test with it with ChatGPT, and it works great.
Really?
Yeah.
Give me an idea how you used it.
I can either share my screen or just share the chat with you guys, I think.
Bob, you want to?
Yeah, no, I'll turn it over.
Swap for a second? Because it's just kind of, since we're on the topic.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right. Yeah, so I just asked it to create a mind map.
Yeah,
there you go.
Right.
What's cool about it is that you can also edit it in Whimsical, so you can alter it and change it and so forth.
That's cool. Okay, so you just taught me something today, because I didn't realize Whimsical put a plug-in in there. So amazing. Yeah. That's cool.
That was pretty new.
Yeah.
The Zapier's got I don't know if you've played around with that, John, but Zapier's
I have. I hate it. I hate it. It's so slow. It's just, no, I created a couple of zaps just to see. I created one where I could take ChatGPT and paste in some contact information and have it turn it into a VCF that I could insert into Outlook, or actually my CRM, and it did it.
And so again, this is a slide I use internally to explain why we have to kind of use innovation. We have to innovate the innovation process, right? And the way to do that is using a lot of these new tools, because the pace of change is picked up so drastically. It used to take forever or something a lot of style, but it doesn't take anymore. This is another slide I use when I show them, look, every company kind of goes through this life cycle, right? Birth to death. And just about every company I ever talked to from a coaching standpoint always feels like they're just past the highest point, right? They're never in the cost cutting or death spiral that I call it on the backside until I start talking to them. And then when you get an innovation cycle, we only got a few minutes, so I'm going to just kind of race through this. The whole, our goal when we use these tools is to come up with an idea that's meaningful, unique, which is something that someone will pay more money for than the also rans. And then this will probably be the last slide for me that I go over. But if you got an innovation process, this is kind of how it lays out for us. So we spend only about 5% of our budget, but a third of our time in this defining what the idea is, because creating ideas is another. We could talk all day about creating ideas and using ChatGPT and other AI programs to help generate ideas or help take an idea that you got and expand upon it and maybe get some more disruptive sort of imagery in your mind so that it can kind of get you out of your pathways. That's one of the things I'm teaching. It so happens I'm teaching innovation engineering to the engineering class, a class of engineers. They are not the most flexible minds that you can try to teach things to, right? Because they are, by definition, their entire life has been about building these well-traveled pathways in their mind and how they go about thinking through ideas and other things. And this whole innovation process requires you to find ways to knock them off of those old pathways and broaden their mind and their approach to do that. And we use things like in the case of create ideas, we use a lot of disruptive imagery to kind of break them out of their thought patterns. The ability to generate imagery and random imagery that can kind of be around the subject that you're talking about, but to try and spark new ideas that's something we're already using, right? Used to, I would have to go find those images, search on the internet to try to find the exact image I was looking for to kind of not, to match up with the subject matter. You don't have to do that anymore. You can use ChatGPT and you can use Midjourney and create those images on the fly. Like the one John you created with the light bulb and the brain in it. That's a disruptive image, right? It's beyond the scope of what the normal image of a light would be. So if that's used in terms of how am I going to create new ways of lighting a room, that's a disruptive image, right? I mean, it takes your mind off of the normal thought patterns and into new ways. So that's one little aspect of the innovation process. But from a time standpoint, you can see that we're able to go through our designs. We can go through the ideas and throw out the bad ones and keep the good ones in a lot shorter period of time by using these tools to kind of help us expand. Because a lot of developing an idea into a product is about learning how to communicate what that product is, right? And what it accomplishes and what its value proposition is and why is it unique? What's the promise that it's going to deliver to the customers? All of those things. So, again, not everybody's really good writers. So that's another way for us to do that. And we could talk more about this stuff later. We're already at the time, so I'm going to hand it back.
At the buzzer. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. So once again, thank you guys for coming. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions? Things we want to discuss next time? All right. Glenn, hit it.
I can't remember the name of the company that is working on creating agents that will basically like take actions in your software on your behalf. Like it's almost like, remember the good old days of creating macros where you would click and it would remember what you did and then it would just kind of redo it.
Yeah, do
it. So there's a company that's doing an AI powered version of that. And I can't remember the name of it, but I was hoping maybe somebody here would be able to.
Not for me.
Memory.
But I'll dig in.
It sounds interesting because like there's a lot of like in our, we use Drip for our marketing as one of our marketing automation tools, and so much of the work now, every time we create a new opt-in lead magnet or whatever, is just duplicating an existing workflow, making some changes and all that kind of stuff. It'd be great, just to and especially as we roll out more and more like workshops and other lead magnets and things like that. Every time we create one of these, we got to create a whole freaking workflow with it, and it's just at this point it's
exhausting.
very rote.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Glenn, with that.
I think I heard of a company called Magic that does this kind of workflows, but it could be just promises wrapped up in ChatGPT too, because it wasn't like something big, you know. But take a look.
Yep, will do. Thank you.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. I will let you know if we're going to do one next Friday. I may have to take the week off to catch up on some stuff, but I'll keep you posted. So meanwhile, y'all have a great holiday weekend. Make it a long one, and we'll catch you on the next time. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
So much. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.